This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 267. I'm running out of fingers.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. Great guest as per usual today. We talk about sales engineering as if sales engineering is a technical part of sales. In a different world, in the mechanical world, civil, biomedical, as we shall see today, a sales engineer is not what we think a sales engineer is. It's a completely different role. It's more of a sales role. And that's why I want to talk to Meri today, our guest, Meri Martinez. And we're going to talk about her journey, about why she got into sales engineering. In her world, it's sales, and why she got out of it. Because it might not be a good fit for everybody. It might be the wrong situation. So I really wanted to discuss that with her because the title of the show is, let me remember what the title of the show is. Here, 1 second. Just stay with me. It's finishing what you started is not always the right move. Right? We all have that concept that we have to finish what we started. But what if you're hating it? What if you don't like what you started? Do you continue investing in it, or do you step back and reassess? It's not always the right thing to do. If you're going down the wrong path, finishing that path is not necessarily better for you. And that's why I wanted to talk to Meri today. It wasn't the wrong path, it wasn't the right path, but she started on a path. It's always good to start on a path and then reassess throughout. So let's just jump into the discussion with Meri, and I will see you after. Welcome to the show, Meri. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well. Meri is not your actual name, but that's what you go by. For those who don't know you, what is your full name? What do you do?
Well, my full name is technically Gabriela Meritzel Martinez Delgadillo.
Okay. Maybe I should have asked that question.
Meri. Meri is short for Meritzel, which it's a Spanish name, but of course, when I came to the US, my husband was actually the first one to start calling me Meri. Even though he does speak Spanish, he could have very easily said Meri, but Mary's how it started.
Yeah. That's cool. So in Lebanon, our names is basically my name, my father's name, and then my last name. And I was able to combine. I kind of created a chain of Ramzi Lias Naim Khalil Musa Khalil Marjab, as in I put all my ancestors in there. I just use it as my full name for fun. But yeah, okay.
Nice.
All right. So what do you do?
I am currently a project manager and regulatory specialist, which essentially means that I helped software as medical device companies get to market through the FDA here in the US.
Okay. And if I go back through your history, you've done multiple things throughout your career.
Yeah.
How did you get to where you are today?
So I graduated from my biomedical engineering degree back in 2020. So I'm a pandemic graduate. And ever since then, I graduated from biomedical engineering. So my focus initially was definitely in the medical device industry. Like I wanted to work something in the medical device industry. When I started learning about regulatory affairs, I thought it was really cool because you kind of get to learn the rules about what is needed to get a device approved by the FDA and then put it in the market. So I thought that was a really interesting specific branch to dive into. And that's what I did for about maybe almost 2 years. But as you know, and the reason why we're here today is that eventually somewhere in the middle, I decided to try out a sales role, which is not something I thought I would ever do before, but I went through it. And I can touch on it right now, or I can touch on it later, but yeah,
whatever you feel like.
So I guess just to close my timeline so far, I was only on my sales role for about 10 months before I decided to just jump back to the medical device industry. But yeah, that's kind of my timeline so far.
Okay. So a couple of things. You said you decided to do biomedical engineering.
Yes.
Okay. Why did you choose that role? Like, what was the goal afterwards? I don't know if you knew medical products by then, but why did you choose it to begin with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I kind of chose the degree. I always try to like to say that I went in blind into the degree. I just chose it because it sounded cool. Like initially I wanted to do something that had some math in it. So I just thought of engineering, and when in my original hometown, the engineering degrees were really limited to like mechanical and civil engineering. Like that was it.
Okay.
And I was initially just going to pursue mechanical, but then I always had that kind of like medical, like I don't want to say exposure, but some sort of interest just because my parents were in the medical field. So I was interested in that, and it just always seemed really cool. And then when I learned about biomedical engineering, I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I like biology. I'll just do that, which yeah, it's completely different, but that's kind of what got me into it. And once you start something, you got to finish it, right? But no, I really enjoyed the journey. Like I really enjoyed learning about it. And then of course, as I, got through my degree, like in the latter years, like I got to learn more about what I could do. And I was like, yeah, I'll just do this, and it sounds fun. So I just stuck with it.
Yeah. You said once you start something, you have to finish it. Do you?
Not always, not always. I think you always, it's funny because I read somewhere something, or I heard someone say it, like someone about that they were going through their law degree, and 2 years in they were like, I hate it, like but it's already been 2 years, like I have to finish it. And I mean, you spend 2 more years finishing it because you feel bad that you would waste 2 years, but then your whole life ahead, I mean, not necessarily, you always have the flexibility and fluidity to move outside of your degree if you want to, but it does kind of define what you can do. So yeah, anyway, yeah, no, I
No, I
kind
get
of
that.
agree, but kind of not. Yeah.
I get that. It's like you invested so much time. You think like it's sunk cost, and sometimes you feel like you can't keep going, but you might be better. Like, I don't know, everybody has to make that decision at the time, and you can always switch after, I guess. And what I loved about you said, like regulatory affairs, that you have to figure out. Whenever I hear regulations, I'm like, oh, another rule that I have to stick by. But I love the fact that what you do is understand the rules and then figure out how to actually use the rules to pass some stuff out. Also, that's pretty cool. You also co-founded something. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, sounds fancy, but yeah, me and my husband are co-founders of our social media platform, the View Me Live. It's mainly a YouTube channel. And we really just started it while I was an undergraduate student, just wanted to talk about the biomedical engineering field because, like I said, I went in blindly, and that wasn't 100% on me being just ignorant. Like that was also because there was not a lot of information out there. And I'm sure you are too, but I'm someone who enjoys watching YouTube videos, listening to other people talk, and you kind of, when you hear someone talk about their experience and what they do, like their day to life, things like that, I feel like that kind of inspires you, like, oh, I could do that too. And like, I really see myself doing that. And I thought that would be a good way to show people what you could do with a biomedical engineering degree. So that's kind of what we started it.
And what's interesting is that's how I found you. I found you through your YouTube channels. I reached out because you had a video called "The Day in the Life of a Sales Engineer."
Yes,
and that sounds like, yeah, sounds cool. So, and you mentioned, so you went from like Product manager, regulatory affairs, regulatory consultant. I'm stalking your LinkedIn in case you're wondering.
Yeah, no,
And you went into sales, like the title is sales engineering.
yes.
Before we get to what was the role like? Like, why did you said you never thought that you'd go into sales.
Mhm.
What convinced you to try it?
Honestly, what convinced me, I guess just a step back, like someone reached out to me with that opportunity. It was someone that I knew because of my YouTube channel. Like we were initially talking about collaborating in some way where like I could help them market their device somehow, or not their device, their products. And so we kind of started that connection that way. And then one day they just said, hey, we actually have a sales position open if that's something that you'll ever want to consider. And when he told me that, I almost even felt bad because I was like, I'm not even gonna consider that, but like but thank you for letting me know. But I guess I just kept it in the back of my head and actually decided to do some research on it. Because when he first told me we have a sales position open, my mind pictured like a car salesman, someone just being completely pushy and like trying to sell you. And I don't have that type of personality, and that's not something I wanted to change my personality to. So I was like, my first initial thought was no, like thank you, but no, right? But obviously I didn't say it in the moment. I was just like, oh, thank you. I'll think about it. And eventually I started thinking about it and doing some research. And I came through some of your YouTube videos just talking about it, some other YouTube videos, just trying to learn like what is sales engineering, because I had never heard the term before. And the more I started diving into it, I was like, okay, I think it's more like you're more like a consultant almost, which is what I was already doing. And I did enjoy that part of it, just kind of like talking to people in the field and trying to help them find a solution. So I like that. And I was like, okay, maybe it's not what I was thinking, maybe it's actually something I could do and I could feel comfortable doing. But what really, really convinced me, just being completely honest, is the income potential. I really like the idea of, oh, you can have a base salary and a commission on top of that. And if I work really hard, I'll earn a lot of money, So I really like that idea, that I wasn't necessarily trading hours for dollars, that my effort would really reflect on my income. And that's kind of the idea that really sold it to me. And I just decided to try it.
So it's funny because you said you watched my videos and I talk about sales engineering, but sales engineering in the tech world, which is what I focus on, is very different from sales engineering in the medical or biomedical world. What did you notice, like once you started the job? How would you define your role? Because we say sales and we're saying sales engineering, we're kind of using them interchangeably. How do you define sales engineering, or define sales engineering when you were in that role?
Yeah, so as I saw it in my role, first I'd like to say that the industry I was in was a hardware industry, I would say. Um, Essentially sold x-rays, but they weren't like medical x-rays. They were for like inspecting products, like any type of product. Um, so anyway, I guess going back to my role, like it was really mostly like following up with leads, qualifying them, nurturing them, trying to figure out what kind of solution would work best for them. And I guess this is where like the technical side, like the engineering side of the title really came in. Just, trying to understand what their products were and what kind of solutions from our offerings would work for them, whether that was something that we just had as a standard offering, or we also had like custom solutions. So with the custom ones, the engineering really came in place, and you of course also had to communicate with the engineering team to try to find a solution for them and ensure that they would actually work. But yeah, it was a lot of following up with leads, a lot of emails, a lot of calls. I only got to attend 2 trade shows during my time there. But yeah, and of course, eventually closing the sales and just, I guess, keeping some sort of relationship with them afterwards. As you heard, I wasn't really there for that long, so I didn't really have a chance to do too many things in there. But yeah, it was mostly that, just working with your leads and closing them,
Yeah.
trying to keep a forecast of, what you think you can close and trying to make that happen.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So it sounds like it was pure sales, or like what we call pure sales in our industry, but you had to do everything from finding the lead to closing the lead and the engineering part as well, at least working with your engineering team. So it wasn't like in our world, that's pure sales or account management. And then there's an SE. Did you know that going in when you received the offer, or you found out after the fact?
I knew what I was going to do, but I wouldn't really know how to define it, like you're saying right now, like account manager, as like, yeah, like those definitions or those words, I've definitely words that I've heard when I watched sales engineering videos, but they just went through my head and like didn't really grab on them. But I was aware of what my responsibilities would be for sure.
Okay.
And I do want to mention that I personally didn't really have much experience in actually finding new leads. And
Okay.
I know we kind of talked about this in the past, but the company would kind of just provide all the leads for us. And of course, if we wanted new leads, we could create our
Yeah.
own or try to find our own. And we did have kind of like a goal of like every week reach out to a certain number of new leads. But it was something that we actually kind of stopped doing after a few weeks, like mainly focused on the ones that we did have. But yeah, just wanted to mention that I personally didn't really focus that much on finding new ones.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of account managers don't have to find new leads. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, so, there's white papers on the website, whatever, customers go in and download them. There's a team that actually does the initial qualification and then assigns it to an account manager. So in many cases, account managers or account executives or regional sales managers, million titles, don't have to do that work. But once it's in their funnel, they have to go and follow up. And it sounds like that's exactly what you were doing. Which is, when you hear sales engineering in my world, that means we don't do any of that, right? We're just brought in for the technical aspect, and then we help the account manager to do all the rest of the stuff. We're not responsible for the rest of the stuff. So that's why I wanted to talk to you, because a lot of people talk about sales engineering and then they get a job as in a mechanical or civil organization, and they have the job that you're describing, not what I'm describing.
I see.
And it's fairly common. So anything outside of tech, almost tech and SaaS, they do everything. Sales engineers are sales people who do everything from A to Z, and they have to know the technology.
Yeah.
So it is a difficult role. And you said you weren't there for very long. For when you were there, what was it that you enjoyed about that role, if there was anything? Actually, scrap that. One thing I wanted to comment on is like, hey, you said I really work hard and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
How did you, like, when you did your quota affect that?
So first I'd like to mention one thing that I also found interesting is that they weren't super like what's the word? I don't know, like they wouldn't really emphasize the quota that much to us. Honestly, I didn't really find out about it till like sometime after I started. And I don't think so, to be honest. I think I really kind of just compared myself to what other people were doing. And there was one specific sales engineer, well, actually two of them that were really good. And, every month they would have all these closed sales. So that was kind of like my goal. That was my quota that I had in my mind. But also in the beginning, I would say for the first at least 3 months, no one was really expecting me to actually close anything. So I was really working on just practicing the my behaviors, or like practicing sending out emails, practicing sending out calls, and like creating schedules and things like that. And I was definitely following up with people but for the first few months I did not close anything, and no one really expected me to, because x-rays were really expensive, and most people don't really sign the check right away. It's a process to get to the finish line. So yeah, it wasn't until after like 3 or 4 months that I actually had my first close, but ever since then it kept going. So once I started closing, I started feeling very optimistic about it. But I still feel like, when I mentioned if I work really hard, I'll earn a lot of income. I still feel like that wasn't necessarily true once I realized that wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. There was a lot of things I didn't have control in. But anyway, yeah, I'll just stop there. Like, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was like thinking, because I mean, I worked in network engineering and in support, and I worked really hard. I worked overtime, and I didn't get paid for that. When you're in sales and sales engineering, you have the potential to earn, if you work hard, to earn more, but it's the potential, not a guarantee, right? Because you can do all the work. You can work 24/7 and not close a single deal, and you're not getting paid more, right? So it's the potential to earn more, not necessarily a guarantee to earn more.
Right. Yeah.
And so you have to learn all these behaviors. They don't seem like fun behaviors to me, right? Like, no one wants to sit there and just send email after email and call after call, or follow up for the fifth time with someone who doesn't like to be followed up with. We just assume that they don't like to be followed up with. What was part of the role that you enjoyed?
So I think, I've always been on the shy side of the spectrum. So, having to call people was always, daunting, and please don't answer, please don't answer. But I found myself that, when I actually got in a phone call with people, or especially when they were leads that directly reached out to us, like they actually had a need, like and they needed it yesterday. Those were the fun ones, because I really did like interacting with people. As even though I'm shy, like, realizing that, this is actually a nice person I'm talking to. I'm enjoying talking to them, and I enjoy trying to help them. And I think when you're in a consulting role, you kind of get that sense of like, I can help this person. This person is like looking up to me to try to help them. So you kind of have that care relationship. And I like that. I like that feeling of they're leaning on me to help them. Let me try my best. So I definitely like that. And in that industry specifically of x-ray, I also like that I got to learn, like I said, it could be used for a lot of different products. So it was just fun to learn a little bit more about all the different industries. Like, before that, I only knew about the medical device industry, but with this role, I also got to learn a lot of things, like from the electronics to like fashion to food. So it was really fun to like see how x-ray, which was like completely foreign to me before, and then just learning about how it could be used in everything, really. So that was very fun.
Yeah, and so I consider myself an introvert as well. Like, I don't call myself shy. I'm not shy, but if there's a large group of people, I don't feel the need to talk. Right? I can just sit there and listen to people talk for hours, and I don't have to say a word, and I'm happy with my life. And people look at me funny. It's like, oh, why isn't this person saying anything? It's like, well, because I'm enjoying listening to you. But I'm good at connecting one-on-one, right? So even as an introvert, you can find ways to connect with people. And that's why I think sales engineering and sales could be a very good role for introverts as well. They just have to do things a little bit differently than extroverts potentially. So I like what you just said there. And that brings me to my next point. What made you decide to leave sales?
Yeah, so I think it was a mixture of a few things, but I would say that the main one is just that it was a very emotionally stressful job for me. Like every Monday we had a sales meeting where, they would ask us, what are you closing this week? Last week you said you were closing this. Why hasn't it closed? And I understand that it's your boss's job to get you to sell too, right? But for me, it was just too much to handle. And I knew it wasn't personal. I knew it was part of the role, but it just didn't work with my personality. Like every Sunday I was miserable thinking of how the next day I would have a team meeting and would have to answer these questions. And if I had like, oh yeah, Friday I closed something, I'd be very happy. But most of the time that wasn't the case. And it was just a stress that was really weighing on me personally. And I as much as I enjoyed the people I worked with, even my boss, like he was an amazing person, but it was just too emotionally stressful for me. I couldn't bear with that feeling, and it was making my life a little difficult. So I just decided to let it go.
So I want the sales engineers, like the technical sales engineers, to repeat the last like minute of you talking, because I talk to a lot of sales engineers who look at me and say look like other salespeople and say I can do their job better than they can, and they don't realize that this is what salespeople in every company go through in two different extremes, right? It's like I do funnel reviews one-on-one with my manager. It's not in front of people, and if a customer we're going to close it and the customer backs out, I have the ability to say oh, well, the customer backed out. What do you want me to do, right? Whereas someone who's brand new to the role and hasn't been doing this for very long may not have that ability. Right? So I love that you just said that, and I agree with you 100%. It is a stressful job. The upside is great, but the downside is also you're going to have to answer to people. And a lot of times management treat us, like you said, their job is to make us sell more. I think their job is to enable us to sell. And that's the difference between old school mentalities, the salesperson, I'm going to push you until you sell. That doesn't really work. I mean, if someone wants to sell, they're going to sell. If someone doesn't want to sell, they're not going to sell. If someone's trying to sell, they need coaching, not pushing.
Yeah.
And that's where I see a lot of sales managers or sales directors fail, in my humble opinion. So you moved on, right?
Yeah.
Well, did you want to add anything to that?
I guess I did, just for anyone that might be listening to this and thinking, oh, I don't want to do it. I just want to mention that something I really like too is that it was very emotionally stressful, but I feel like the actual work, how can I say it? The tasks that I had to do were relatively simple. I feel like the day-to-day tasks were actually very easy. Sometimes I would have very short 4-hour days if I didn't really have anything to do. And I just want to say that although I did have to learn the technology and there was some complexity in that for sure, following up with people, emailing people, talking to them, it was really a simple task. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that you had a really good salary and potential for commission with a workload that wasn't that bad. But the emotional part of it was too much. And I also want to mention that I think part of that was that there's a lot of things you can't control in sales. Ultimately, it's up to the person on the other end. Well, that's my opinion, at least. They make the final decision. And yes, I could try to lead them to the finish line, but at the same time, there was all these things like, oh, well, we're still checking our budget, and you know what, this year it's not going to work, it's going to be till next year, or this happened and we don't have the budget anymore. So there were a lot of things that I couldn't really control, and I just feel like that added to it. So yeah, I guess just kind of wanted to mention a little bit more on that.
Yeah, and I agree with that assessment. There's a lot of fun things that we can do. Like talking to people is fun, consulting with them is fun, but you can do everything right and still not close the deal. Right? Or a competitor could come in at a cheaper price, and no matter how much value you showed, they're still going to go with the competitor and not tell you until it's too late. So yeah, like that's the part about sales. There's a lot of fun stuff, but there's also a lot of stressful stuff. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've moved on. You went back into like regulatory specialist. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm curious, like, what skills did you learn from sales, or if any, that are helping you with your current job right now?
Well, I haven't really touched. It's funny because when and I do want to say, I didn't just move out like because I was done with it and I couldn't wait to get out. Like someone reached out to me with a regulatory job, and it was kind of like an exit, like an opportunity to exit. So I weighed my options and I decided to go that way.
There's nothing wrong with leaving a job that you're hating, right? Like,
yeah,
there are some fun stuff, but if something is stressful, not everybody has to be great at everything. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's a myth that people like, oh, everything you do, you have to do 100%. I mean, you can try, but if you're hating it and it's not giving you the passion to put enough effort in, why would you stay there? There's nothing wrong with it. But that being said, you were presented an opportunity, you didn't go looking for one.
Right. Yeah, I think I could have handled staying a little bit longer. And honestly, when I started, my mentality was like, let me try this for a year and see how it goes. I didn't get to the year quite there, but yeah, I just wanted to mention it. Like I did hate it at some point. Just I hated how it made me feel. But I think I could have lasted a little longer if I had not been given like the choice. And anyway, skills that I use now, I don't know, to be honest. Like I don't know if I'd gotten to use any of those skills. I think I could, because when this new regulatory position was presented to me, the person who reached out to me was actually like, hey, we're actually looking for someone, for like a new regulatory consultant, but we also noticed that you have a sales experience, and that's something too that we kind of would want someone that can take care of like the new leads and things like that. It's not something I've actually done in my time here so far, but I've only been here like a few months. But it's definitely something that's in the plan for me to also start taking a little bit of the sales, which is again just really qualifying the incoming leads and seeing if they're a good fit, and then closing, and then starting the regulatory service with them. So I do see an opportunity to use that, but as of so far, I don't know. Like I think maybe just like forecasting, or like, yeah, because before this, like I didn't really have too many skills in like being able to schedule projects. Like I would just kind of get them done. And I think with sales, you have to kind of learn how to, when are you closing, and how's the timeline like. So I think that's definitely one thing that's helped me so far. But I haven't really done too much of the sales skills in this new role, I think.
Are you doing any consulting with your customers?
I am, but honestly, most of it is really on the back end. Like it's a lot of independent work right now.
Okay.
I do very little like FaceTime with the customers, so I do think that also kind of,
Okay.
weighs on that. Yeah.
And how, I know you've only been there for a few months. How are you feeling now that you've taken on this role versus the previous one?
Yeah, no, honestly, I feeling really well. I'm glad I made the decision. And this is a role I had experienced before, so I kind of knew what to expect from it. So yeah, completely different levels of stress. Like I do not feel that pressure anymore. So definitely feel good about it. But yeah.
This is kind of a leading question, which I'm pretty sure I know the answer to. Do you regret trying out sales for that little bit less than a year?
I don't. Honestly, I don't. I do think like I do wonder, like if I had stayed, what could have been in it? Maybe I would have eventually grown out of having to feel that way, just learn how to control the emotion and not take it personally, and actually be very successful at it. I don't know. But I I don't regret it. I think it was from the beginning, I knew that it was worth the try. I knew that if I actually succeeded at it, it would, reap great benefits. So from the beginning, I knew it was worth the try. And I did enjoy the people I worked with. It was a good company. So I think yeah, I think I enjoyed it. I definitely would not change my decision. It also led me to this opportunity, which,
Yep.
if I hadn't quit before, maybe I wouldn't have this new role now. So it's all part of the learning process. I got to travel to California a few times, so that was a plus. But yeah, no, I did not regret it. It was tough, but I did not regret it.
The way I see it, and I'm going to make a set of assumptions here that may be true or may not be true for your current situation or your previous situation, but it could be true for a lot of people. When someone becomes a new salesperson or SE or anything like that, management is usually too busy trying to close deals. That training that SE or coaching that the salesperson is not a priority, especially if the salesperson is doing the tasks that they're supposed to be doing. Whether they're doing it right or wrong is almost hard to know, because like I sent an email out, I followed up, but what does that mean? So if someone's going into sales, and they're brand new, I would highly recommend looking for a sales coach, just someone who's dedicated to coaching them amongst other people, not necessarily just them, but someone external, someone to guide them. I think that would be very beneficial, because I was talking to someone a few weeks ago who also went into sales and didn't enjoy it and went and chose to do something else. They were under the assumption that they're going to be great from day one, but they were musicians. And we got into the conversations like, hey, did you study? Did you just jump into an orchestra, or did you study for a few years before? He's like, I've been playing since I was 14 or whatever. It's like, yeah, well, so you had 10 years of training. Whereas as salespeople, we just jump in and we're expected to do everything right. So I think that's a big difference. And I think people should look at investing in a sales coach. I think that will be helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, MC, and you mentioned something that I think is very true. When I first started interviewing for that sales job, one of my first questions was, what kind of training would you guys offer? Because I don't have any sales experience, so how are you gonna help me, be good at the job? And they're like, oh, yeah, we do this Sandler training. I think that was their response. And I was like, okay, I mean, I don't know what that means, but that sounds good. And honestly, when I started the job, I think the first week, so my job was mostly remote, but the first week I did go to the office, and it was a lot of training, but on the company's technology, not really like the sales side. The focus
Yep.
was really on learn our offerings and what we do, and you'll be good.
Yeah.
But the sales portion, like the psychology, the behavior of it, how should I do it, wasn't really something they focused on. And I think having those basics would have really helped to have in the beginning. Later on during my role, I kind of brought it up like, hey, like I would really like to learn about more of the psychology side of sales, like I don't know how to put it, but like something that's not really the technology, I get it. I get what we're selling.
The human side of sales.
Exactly. Like I really needed to learn more of that. And they actually did start teaching me more about it, like really put in an effort to try to mentor me more on that side. So I do appreciate that. But in the beginning, it was not something that came out of their minds, like yeah.
Yeah, that's funny, because that's most, like, even sales engineers, like in the tech world, when they're brought in, they're taught the technology and not how to sell it. Right? Not how to talk to customers about it. So it seems to be a global issue, right? And I feel like SEs need more than just training. Training is like a boot camp. You go there for a few days, they give you a bunch of theory, you practice a couple of times, and then you walk away and forget everything. Which is why I'm saying coaching, like someone to actually continuously work with you and remind you, do role plays, that sort of thing. And if you don't want coaching, maybe find a few people within your team that are like-minded, who can actually practice with you and practice together and give you feedback, and you give them feedback. So yeah, that was my thought process behind that. And you're not alone. You are definitely not alone. A lot of salespeople are not set up for success. They come in and they're just left to their own devices to figure stuff out. And many of them don't have the self-awareness to ask for I need help with the human part of this. So yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. And now that you're in a role that you enjoy, why do you enjoy this role?
Well, I think first thing is that, like I mentioned, I went into biomedical engineering because I was really interested in like the medical technology field. So just being immersed in that world again is really nice, because it's something that I actually have some passion for. Whereas like X-ray was, I mean, it was fun, but it was completely foreign to me. So coming back to something that I knew, that I worked on for 4 years in my degree, it just feels very familiar. So I like being back in the world that I grew up in, so that feels nice. Also, I do get a little bit of the consulting, but these projects I feel are longer than a sales cycle is. So you kind of I get to build closer relationships with my clients than I did before. I think like before, it was also kind of me like slightly trying to push them to, they knew I wanted to sell them something, and now it's just like kind of me helping them, so it's like a different it's a different relationship, but still similar. But with that said, I do not really get that much FaceTime as it did before. Like I definitely had a lot more like, phone calls or video calls with clients, and now I really don't. Like I think I'm really just mainly working on a couple projects that are actually mine, whereas before I had like this pipe drive full of things that I just needed to keep up with. So it's very different workload, very, less things I have to have my mind on. But yeah, I also like that there's more independent work here on this role. Like I do get I would say that at least 50% of the time I'm just doing my job. I have to get this task done, and I'm working on it. So I do enjoy having a little bit of that downtime and just working by myself.
So usually with every call, I ended with the not so fire round. And these are the same 4 questions I ask almost every guest. And I just realized that I just asked you the first one without intending to do it. So let me jump into the rest then, and we'll see. So question number one is, what do you love about what you do today? And you already answered that, unless you want to provide something else. But if not, we can move on to the next one.
At the end, just really cliche thing is like in the medical device world, it's something that will actually like really, really impact people's lives in the end. And I think you could say that for everything, really, like, oh, I'm working on X-ray and it's gonna help deliver quality products that are really gonna help people. But it's just, again, just like the medical world is something I enjoyed. So I enjoyed thinking that, you're helping people's lives, and especially in the consulting role in the medical device industry, when you work for a big med tech company, like, you're working with I don't want to say normal, but like existing technology. But when you're like in the consulting world, you work with a lot of startups, and that means a lot of innovation. So that's definitely something that's really fun as well.
That's pretty good. All right. So question number 2 is, what do you consider is your superpower?
My superpower, I don't know. I think maybe on the independent side, I think I'm just very organized and detail oriented, and I think that's something that's helped me in any role I've done. And then more on a personal side, like I think I care for people, like I really do. Like when I had a sales lead, like I truly cared for them, and I did care about, it was always them the top priority, not me selling to them. So I was happy that I could make that difference, that I wasn't solely focused on selling them. Like I wanted to help them. And I think that's always true. So yeah, I think people can sense that, and sense that you're not pushing them and you're just trying to help. So I think that would be a good one.
Nice. Okay. For your current role, or whatever role you want to talk about, is there a resource or book, YouTube channel other than yours? What is your YouTube channel, by the way?
It's the BME Life.
Okay. So other than the BME Life, is there a resource you recommend for people who want to get into the biomedical industry?
Yeah, I would say FD, specifically like in the medical device industry, FDA's website has a lot of really good information. They have some guidance documents that just kind of talk about, any guidance that they have for medical device manufacturers, and it's just very, like, they actually have very user-friendly words in their documents, so they're really nice to read. But yeah, honestly, YouTube is a big one for me too. Just like, and it doesn't even have to be my channel. Like just looking up day in the life as a biomedical engineer, day in the life of a sales engineer, just looking up like YouTube channels of the roles you want to work in, I think is very, very helpful, because you get to see what they do and, learn if that's something you want to do as well.
That's pretty cool. Right. Last question of the not so fire round. Is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
Habit, I mean, personal, yes. Like try to be a healthier person, just eating healthier, exercising more. And just also too, maybe this is too personal as well, but I just been in a, what's the word? Sorry, my first language is Spanish, so sometimes I forget words.
You can say it in Spanish. I'm sure someone will understand it and translate.
Yeah. No, I think just like habit. Yeah, habit. I've been in this place of like always wanting more. Like you always want more, and I've come to a realization that I need to be more content with what I have right now. That doesn't mean not being ambitious, but coming to a place of peace with what you have right now. And I think that's something a lot of us experience. So definitely something I'm working on right now. Just trying to find peace in the now, and trying to be content.
So I'm actually I went on a rant to myself, and I wrote it down because I want to rant it to other people. Is that about being happy with what you have? Like we all want more, right? And
Mhm.
I've been doing VDSEs. I've been working full time as a salesperson, sales engineer, whatever you want to call me, with 3 kids, a wife, and I just want more for everybody. That I'm postponing being happy right now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
To actually achieve that, and it's hard. Like I've been postponing for I don't know for most of my life, just because they say delayed gratification, but this is going to get personal as well. A family member was about to retire, and then she got sick right before she retired, and now she's blind and in a wheelchair. She's healthy. Other than that, she's happy, she's good, but she doesn't get to enjoy her retirement. So yeah,
Mhm.
like if you can't enjoy life today, don't put it off.
Yeah.
And happiness is reality minus expectation. If expectation is lower than reality, you're happy. If expectation is higher, you're not. So try to find a way to be happy. I love that you just said that. So that's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question of the day, Mary. If people want to reach out and connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can reach out to my email is Meri, Meri, at thebmelife.com. You can also reach out to me via LinkedIn, and maybe Ramsey can put the link below. But yeah, other than that, commenting on YouTube, I do get to see all the comments, so feel free to just reach out there. But yeah, I think LinkedIn would probably be the best, if not email.
Okay. I will put your LinkedIn in the show notes. I will put in your YouTube channel in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on, Mary. It was great talking to you, and look forward to talking to you some more.
Awesome. Thanks, Ramsey. Nice to talk to you as well.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Mary, for coming on. I really appreciate your openness and your honesty and talking about the difficulties you've had and talking about the great things that you've had and the decisions that you've made. For you listening, I really hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you learned something from it. There are a lot of lessons learned that we can take from this show. At a minimum, not all sales engineers are the same in what they do. The job description is different. Even in tech, you can find different types of sales engineers. And when you get out of tech, it's still tech, but it's biomedical tech or structural engineering tech or whatever it is. It's different kind of sales engineering. So I hope you learn that. If you're in that world and you're trying to break in, then look for sales jobs as well. So that's it for me for today. I really enjoyed talking to Mary. So again, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and I will see you next time. With that, I'm signing off.